Hey, totally, spoilers in this for Xenoblade 1 and 2, because I don't know how to make a video essay without going into spoilers for some reason. I'm at least 90% sure I don't need to tell you that Xenoblade 3 was announced, because you're expected to know these things when tuning into my high IQ prestigious ramblings that reach intellect levels as high as Home Depot burger. But I guess if you didn't know that Xenoblade 3 was announced, frankly I would think of you as a goose whose hobbies are to be exceedingly loud like I am, and attacking people in a field like I do. But I guess if you didn't know that the game was announced, I technically just told you that, yep, Xenoblade 3 was announced. And from everything that I personally have seen, from the trailer itself to the community response, it all seems extremely positive, which is frankly exactly what you want to see. I mean, one small-ish achievement that the series has achieved again is that Nintendo sees it as big enough to have as the final announcement to a full-scale Nintendo Direct again, just as Xenoblade Definitive did, which is a prestigious spot which has been held in the past by Nintendo's biggest titles, such as Mario Odyssey, Smash Bros, Splatoon, Bayonetta 3, and Breath of the Wild too. It sure shows just how much has changed since Nintendo of America once turned down the offer to make an English version of Xenoblade 1 for the Wii. Such a community has grown from these games that some idiot finds it fun to make a near 10-minute long video essay talking about a side character from a DLC story that has like 15 lines in a 16-hour game. I mean, if we wanted to get into the talk about the community, sure, there's tons to say. I mean, I could talk for like 5 minutes straight about topics like how it's easier to find El Goddamn Dorado than finding a Xenoblade fan who hasn't also played Persona 5. Like, how people have been talking about how this guy looks like Joker more than they've been talking about how this Nopon kinda looks like Rex in some ways. But setting aside the topic of the community, because it's frickin' terrifying, the overall outlook of Xenoblade 3 looks pretty good. I recently watched the reveal trailers for both Xenoblade 2 and Xenoblade Definitive, and I definitely noticed something that was different about how 3 was presented compared to these others. Xenoblade 2's first few cinematic trailers, for example, hard focused on the world, titans, and goal of grandeur to make it to Elysium, with the world tree towering high with this great level of mysticism around it, only leaving enough time to sprinkle in a few story fight snippets. And Xenoblade Definitive opened with Shulk's iconic scene that takes place right after the game's opening, as he's just laying in the scrapyard, giving off the impression that he's living his life in his place in the world, which evidently, people's place in the world ends up being a huge part of the rest of the game. But Xenoblade 3 opens with a line that sets a grim mood for the rest of the trailer that follows.
Fighting in order to live, and living to fight. That's the way of our world.
I've watched this trailer more times than I care to admit, because look at me. Do I look like I have something better to do with my time? And through my observations, I've kinda honed in on the fact that this entire trailer is fighting, running around while a voiceover talks about fighting, and playing the flute. And sure, Xenoblade is best known for running through breathtaking environments and intense battles that take place throughout the stories, but frankly, that's not all there is to the series. This trailer kinda gives off the impression that there's no subplots to the game that don't entirely revolve around war and fighting. It's like super safe to say that Xenoblade's story is character-driven, and in order to make a good character-driven story, they have to stretch the game out lots just so they have enough time to set aside for characters to interact with each other in many different settings and scenarios. But I feel that's really hard to do with a story that's moved by only battles and conflict. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of ways to develop a character while fighting. I mean, a lot of Rex's character was him being forged into someone who's strong for the sake of others because he just couldn't stand to see his friends get hurt anymore because he couldn't fight in their stead. But there are also character building moments that could have only really happened in that game because they were closely entwined with his trek across the world on his way to Elysium. And Xenoblade 1 has its characters questioning their morals and really considering if their revenge quest is justified after they make a discovery about the world that brings light to the fact that their side were originally in the wrong. There's enough existentialism present to fry my bird brain as they reevaluate their role in the world, which has been a topic that has been relatively important for the entire game up until this point. As before, it was them defying the notion that they are prey to the Mechon, but now they're just realizing that they were pawns to a larger power the entire time. Each of the games in this trilogy in the making so far have had a secondary element to the story rather than just fighting between two sides, which gives more room for character development that can serve as a nice change of pace for the rest of the game. And we were at least teased directly or indirectly of the subplots in the very first trailer for each game, which we didn't really get in this new trailer for Game 3. We just got war happening, fighting, go. And aside from just that, a roster of characters shaped by all-out war will probably also affect the comedic relief characters too, because there really isn't much room for fun in a scene that's supposed to be an intense battle like the ones we've seen in this reveal. And I mean, sure, they don't add the most to the story, but evidently they're part of the series at this point. Sure, there are many people, myself included, who, as I said before, think of the open environments and the battles in these games when they think about like the Xenoblade brand, but it's still hard to imagine what these games would have been like without the encounters with Zeke and Rhine time, baby. So, to sum it all up, although the exploration elements and sick-ass fights look too good, like literally the best in the series so far in terms of visuals and grandeur, if they make a story set entirely in the same tone we saw throughout the first trailer, there might be elements from like the previous games that made them so good, like missing in this one. And yes, you heard correctly, I said first trailer for the game, which I like to think that I possibly made something click with you who are listening right now as to what this all really means in the grand scheme of things. Nothing. This entire thing has meant absolutely nothing because this is the first trailer and nothing is definitive yet. Yeah, you might be thinking, aw shucks, I wasted 6 minutes listening to you talk about Xenoblade, but think about how I spent a week making this only to realize right at the end that none of it matters because this is the first trailer. They could have just chosen to only show those parts of the game off in the reveal because those are the parts that people like about the games. Or maybe they're still ironing those parts out because after all, the game doesn't come out till near the end of the year, so they've still got like months to work on it. My pea-brain really watched this trailer like 9 times a day for a week, noticed that there were no moments that make you reflect on what the hell is even going on in life, and that there were no overly funny-sounding British guys in the first reveal, then I decided I was gonna write a 3-page dialogue about this. Making this was a bigger waste of time than that quest from Xenoblade 2 where you read the 3 different like writings on the walls of Garfon at 3 different times a day. Oh gosh, I'm gonna go play Monster Hunter or something.